Antonia. Where's Antonia?
Right there.
There's Antonia and Mo Ali, well, and Abigail and Pouty. Thank you. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Pooty.
Pooty. Okay. Okay. Thank you. We're here to talk about a very important issue. And let me preface my remarks by telling you what you may or may not know, that you are looking here at the son of an immigrant, somebody who came to the United States from Poland at the age of 17 with very little education, with no money in his pocket, and who could not speak a word of English. Just the kind of person that Donald Trump did not want to come to this country. But here we are nonetheless. And I should also tell you that as somebody who is Jewish, many of my father's family did not make it out of Poland. And I was in Poland 3 years ago or so, 4 years ago, with my brother and our wives. And I went to an area where I learned that an 11-year-old niece of mine had been rounded up by the Gestapo and put in a big hole with a bunch of other people and killed. And she was not the only person in the family who had been killed. When I grew up in this country, when I grew up, my understanding of America was that we were and are a nation of immigrants. And none of us who are immigrants have anything to be embarrassed about, because the truth is that immigrants help build this country. And those are, whether we are from Asia or from Latin America or from Europe or from Africa or from any place else. Generally speaking, historically, the hard work, whether it's building the railroads or working in the factories or tilling the fields, picking the crops, as often as not, that was the work done by immigrants. And what has always been, I think, where the rest of the world has looked at us historically as a special place, is that we have managed, not without many problems, nothing was easy, but we have became a nation in which people from all over the world came together in search of a better life for their children and for their families, and in many cases succeeded. And that's an extraordinary accomplishment. That's nothing to make light of. That is what America has historically been about. We are proud of that, and we are determined to make sure that that legacy of an inviting nation, of a nation where people from all over the world can work together and understand that we have infinitely more in common than the differences perhaps of the color of our skin or our religions. And I understand, as somebody who is obviously involved in politics, how easy it is to demagogue against any particular person who might be different from the majority. And that's nothing new. Donald Trump is not the first person to be a demagogue. It's existed all over the world, and it has existed for, unfortunately, a very long period of time. And what demagogues do is, instead of deal with the real issues facing the country, how do we have a nation in which all of our people have decent wages? How do we have decent housing? How do we make sure all people get a good education, have health care as a right? How do we deal with the environment? Those are real issues, and we got to discuss those issues, and we will discuss them today. That is what serious politics in a democracy is about. How do we bring health care to all people? All right? What is not serious politics, what is demagoguery, is looking at her or him and saying, you know what, if you're working for low wages, or you don't have any health care, or your kid can't go to a college, it's her fault. It's her fault, or his fault. That's called demagoguery. That's called bigotry. That's called prejudice. And that has no place in American society. So what our job is in this particular moment in American history, and all of you know, and I hope you all know who have studied American history, that there has always been bigotry. There was bigotry, terrible bigotry against the Native American people. Do we have any Native American people here? Terrible bigotry and terrible things done. And God only knows what's happened to the African American community in terms of slavery and segregation, and the Asian community, and the Irish and the Italians and the Jews, you name the group, and there has been prejudice. And over time, hopefully, things work out and improve. But our job, it seems to me, is not complicated. And I think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said it the best, is that we judge human beings not by the color of their skin, and to paraphrase them, not by their religion, not by where they came from, but by who they are as human beings, by their character. And what we all know, no matter where you come from, whether it's Asia or Latin America or the Middle East or any place else, people have the same dreams and the same aspirations. I've got 4 kids and 7 grandchildren. What I want is the same as you want for your kids, and that is to make sure that they live good lives, that they have access to the health care they need if they get sick, that they have a great education, that when they turn on the water in their homes, the water is clean to drink, that they live in a society of love and not hatred. That's what we all want. And the diversity that we bring to the nation is a good thing. We learn from each other. We grow from each other. We're all a little bit different, and that's a good thing. So the goal here is to create a nation in which all people live together, work together, to oppose Trump and all of those who are trying to divide us up, whether it is based on the color of our skin or our religion or where we come from or our sexual orientation or whatever it may be. Our belief is that we are all in this together, and we will oppose all efforts to divide us up. And then on top of that, and part of that whole struggle, is also the understanding that we have got to create a nation and an economy and a government that works for all and not just the wealthy and the powerful. All right? We are living in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. 40 million people should not be living in poverty. Tens and tens of millions of people should not lack health insurance or be underinsured. Young people should have the opportunity to get all of the education that they need regardless of their incomes. We have got to together address the great crisis of climate change, which is going to impact Iowa, it's going to impact my state of Vermont, it's going to impact the entire world. And this is both a moral issue and an environmental issue and an economic issue. Because if we don't act boldly to transform our energy system, the planet that we're going to be leaving to our kids and our grandchildren will not be healthy and will not be habitable. And we have got to deal with an issue I know we'll talk today about, immigration reform. We are not a nation in which little babies are torn from the arms of their mothers. That is not what the United States is supposed to be about. We are not a nation in which children are separated from their parents and put into cages. That is not what America is supposed to be about. And then we have to deal with issues like criminal justice reform, which impacts minority communities disproportionately. And we have to ask ourselves why we have more people in jail today than any other major country on earth. So there are a whole lot of issues out there. But the goal of it all is to create a non-discriminatory society and to create a nation where we have an economy that works for all of us, black and white and Latino and Native American, Asian American, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Jewish, whatever you are. And the goal is also to create a vibrant democracy where we want more and more people to participate in the political process and not make it harder for people to vote. So that's some of what's on the agenda. And with that, let me now introduce Antonio Rivera. Antonio? You're welcome to come up here if you're more comfortable.
All right. Hi, I'm Antonia. I am 37 years old, a single mother, and a domestic violence survivor. I promised I wasn't going to do this. In 1988, at the age of 6.
You're doing just fine. You're amongst us.
In 1988, at the age of 6, I decided to cross the U.S. border with my one-year sisters to save my mother's life. We had to escape domestic violence at home. My dad would come home drunk and violent towards my mom, and we had to witness that. Without my dad's permission, we could not apply for a visa to come to the United States legally. So we started walking. In 1988 and now, it's not safe for women and children to cross the border. My mom, my sister, and I had to cross with a bunch of men. It was not a safe situation for us. We could have been kidnapped, trafficked, or worse. 30 years later, my mother is still alive, but her spirit is broken. She is the mother of 2 U.S. citizens who helped her file for her visa. My mom received a letter that said, "Congratulations, you've been granted a visa, but guess what? There's a catch-22. She has to go to Mexico to pick up the visa. And once she crosses the border, she's subject to a 10-year ban, and she can't come back and live with us, her family. If she left today, she would be at least 75 years when she's allowed to return." My sister, who came here when she was 1, didn't want to live in this temporary status for the rest of her life, so she applied to be a legal resident. Part of the process required her to return to Mexico. She was stuck in Mexico, a place where she had never lived, for a month, because she was also subject to the 10-year ban. It makes no sense. They approve a waiver here in the U.S., but you have to leave the country to get the paperwork. These experiences shaped who I am. I spent my 20s fighting for what eventually became DACA. I started organizing for the DREAM Act. We started educating ourselves before it was popular. I went to UC, first generation, college grad right here. Thank you. At the time, there were around 90 kids who were undocumented and starting to come out of the shadows in the UCs. We had to educate the public, our parents, our college boards, the scholarship boards, about our existence. We didn't have access to scholarships. They didn't recognize our existence. When we told our stories, they would feel pity and they would never know how to help us. We had to figure out what we could all fight for. That organized eventually began a fight for DREAM Act, DACA, and DAPA. Eventually, we won DACA, and I was included, just barely. DACA ended up excluding first-generation undocumented dreamers and younger people. I was 30 years old when it passed. The cutoff was 30, but many people were left out. We're still fighting today. We still live in limbo. Just a month ago, my DACA permit expired, and I lost my job. I am once again undocumented. I hope that our next president, we understand that I don't need comprehensive immigration reform as it is debated right now. All the bills that are being discussed are just temporary band-aids, extend DACA, renew this, go through more processes, etc., stand in a longer line that exists right now. I don't need compromises or more temporary solutions. I need a solution that is more immediate and permanent than that. All these half measures result in children being locked in cages, people living in limbo. My sister's crime of crossing the border at once still exists today. Even though my sister will qualify to be a U.S. citizen soon, everything she does or she ever did during those 30 years can make her an inadmissible criminal. Signing our kids up for Hawkeye could get us in trouble. I don't want to live with this temporary status for another 10 years. I don't want to because I don't know who will be president in the next 10 years. I don't want to live in limbo. I want the same rights as everyone else. My family, myself, and our immigrants communities have suffered enough. We want to be free while we still have a life to live. And I also don't want my freedom in exchange for the criminalization of immigrants and refugees of the future. We have to keep fighting and coming together and not be afraid to stand up to private prison corporations, Republicans, and even some Democrats and pass real immigration reform that will allow us to live in dignity now. Thank you.
Mo Ali. Mo.
My name is Muhammad Ali. I'm a Palestinian refugee born in Lebanon. We have been refugees since 1948. Okay, I will repeat. My name is Muhammad Ali. I'm a Palestinian refugee born in Lebanon. We have been refugees since 1948. I have been in the U.S. since 2000, and now I'm a U.S. citizen. I grew up in war and came to the land of the free to go to school and live with the freedom. I graduated from Iowa State University, and I'm married with 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. They are here with me today. I have been traveling for 19 years, and every year I'm randomly selected at the airports and taken to the site for investigation. Last month, it was done in a very humiliating way that caused harm to my family. My father and my 12-year-old daughter were with me for a trip to see my sister in Ontario, Canada. We were treated very respectfully by the Canadian border officers, and we visited Niagara Falls. We had a good time. On the way back, there was an incident at the U.S. Customs border stop at Michigan crossing. On the morning of Saturday, June 15, my 71-year-old father and I were detained and handcuffed without a cause or explanation. My daughter was terrified. She was in the car watching. I provided our passport as requested, and within a minute, many officers surrounded our car with their hands on their guns. My car was running. My GPS was on the dashboard. Without any excuse, without any explanation, they pulled my dad out of the car and pulled me too. I was worried that something may have gone wrong, as my father doesn't speak English very well and could have misunderstood their direction. Thank God they did not shoot him, but they did injure his shoulder because he's an older guy, and they twisted his arm, handcuffed him. This treatment is unacceptable. I'm a U.S. citizen with a clean record and excellent reputation in my community. I'm a business owner. My family and my neighbors respect me. My father did not deserve to be physically harmed. My daughter does not deserve to endure emotional distress. I had done nothing wrong, and this incident at the border was frightening and humiliating to us. I have been in this country for 19 years. My only criminal record, I have 1 speeding ticket 5 miles over. That's it. I wrote to Congresswoman Cindy Axne, who is my local representative, and to Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the first Palestinian American member of Congress. Neither one of them have responded to my story yet. I'm waiting and working on this case. But I'm here today to speak with Senator Sanders. I really appreciate you being here in Iowa because I know he will hear me. I'm here to stress the importance of fixing the policies that allow you, a citizen like me, to be harassed and treated without dignity. There is an urgent need for immigration and border security policy reforms if we want our country to be a place where all people can feel safe. I'm here just asking for justice. Thank you.
Abigail, is it Swee?
Yes.
Abigail?
Hello, my name is Abigail C., and I'm a Parent Navigator Program Manager at Embark. And I'm one of over 150,000 refugees from Burma who came to the United States in the past 10 years. And because of the persecution for who we are or what we believe. And Burma is the longest running civil war in the world. Today, I would like to talk about refugee moms like me who believe in their children and their dream is to support their children to have a better life. Refugee parents struggle to know how to support their children's education once they're here in the US due to the language barrier. School can't provide an interpreter for every meeting. And the parent can't talk to the teacher or the doctor. Parents have to take time working 24-hour shifts so they can afford for their rent while their children are home alone. All these factors affects the refugee life, families, their quality of life and well-being. I believe that everyone deserves to have a resources necessarily to live in the dignity of life. It's everyone's dream to become a citizen. But the current immigration system makes it so difficult. Many people are finding a difficult time to take the test. It's too expensive. It takes years to go through all the process to become a citizen. Recently, many people from my community received a letter asking them to travel to Omaha or Kansas City for their citizen interview. This adds the new level of difficulty as they have to miss work and don't know how they are going to get there. Many people from my community feel that refugees are not welcome. And we have to wait like 20 years. I have to wait for 6 years because I came as a single when I came here. But many of my community will have to wait 15 years, 20 years in the refugee camp with children. And just last week, I received a call from a woman whose citizen interview was moved to Kansas City. She feels that Des Moines was not welcoming her or not able to provide resources as she has to go properly through all the immigration process. In the past 6 months, randomly, we received a letter from the US Immigration Office to show up to the US Immigration Office for the interview with no reason, even though we are a permanent resident. That continue to make our community feel left out of the system or separated. We have to change the political landscape and usher in the era that return to the roots of this country, this nation, of providing a place to hope, full of hope or bright future for all who comes here. We just want to have the same chance as everyone else to have a better life. We just want to be able to provide our family and live a healthy lives. And while refugees are building our life, for example, myself, I have 3 kids under 4 years, and I try to earn education. I just graduated in May for my associate degree. I'm trying my best to contribute to this country, even the same as my fellow refugees are good workers. But many of them are still in the border waiting to come to this country, and half of them are the children. So we need to change this policy. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak on the behalf of my community.
Hootie? I won't try the last name, Pam.
Hey everybody, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Putasak Gelpasut, and I'm a proud resident of Des Moines and a proud Lao American. I was raised in Des Moines to the two most important people in my life, my parents. They came to America as immigrants from Laos, seeking refuge and the promise of a better life. This was during a time when Iowa and the nation was more hospitable to people in need arriving at its doorstep. Though the political climate then was not as extreme as we see it now, my parents worked hard to spread roots and build a new life for their family. This is a struggle known to all refugees and immigrants coming to this country. Like Bernie Sanders, I'm a second-generation American. His family came from Poland and mine came from Laos, but both our families came seeking the same thing, the promise of a better tomorrow. We're not from the same generation, but we are cut from the same cloth. We both know the importance of equality and justice, because without those fundamental elements of democracy, we are not truly free. We have the same idea of what America can be. I'm here with Bernie Sanders because I believe he is leading us on a path toward that better America for all of us. I've always tried to learn everything I can about America, its history, its people, its story, and its movements. My parents wanted the best for their children, just like every other parent in this country wants for their own children. I learned about the civil rights movement and American heroes like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The legacy of this chapter in our history makes me feel proud to be an American, because this is a place where fighting for what you believe in actually makes a difference. I love the beautiful diversity and the solidarity in my community. I feel the pain of my neighbors, I feel their losses and their triumphs. I feel their love, I feel their hope, because I am bonded with people who may not look like me or worship as I do. I am energized knowing that these different people are my neighbors, my brothers and sisters, and that we can stand together. We can work together. This country is moving forward united. We are rising above special interests and the corruption of our democracy that we see all around us. Here in Iowa, we know the urgency of living without affordable health care. We know the urgency of earning inadequate wages while the cost of living continues to rise. We know the urgency of fighting global climate change because we see the effects it is having on our lives, our families, our homes, and our businesses. And we know that the real immigration crisis is not about too many people coming into this country. The real immigration crisis is what happens when our government closes its doors to people who need it most. We have a special opportunity here in the state of Iowa to send a message to the world. With our votes, we will demonstrate that hatred will not divide us. We will show the world that we believe in taking care of each other. Health care, living wages, education, these are things we can provide for everyone. Racial justice and economic justice, these are things we owe to each other. Just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a hero in the age of the civil rights movement, we all can be heroes today because there's so much at stake and it's all worth fighting for. This political revolution is worth fighting for. Our future is worth fighting for. Thank you.
Well, let me just pick up. We're going to open it up for questions here on the panel, and you'll ask me questions as well. You know, I try to think, and I don't know the answer really. I don't know the origins of hate. I don't know why it is that people feel the need to hate, why people feel frightened about somebody because they look a little bit different, or they come from a different part of the world, or they have a different religion. And what I have always believed is that when people get to sit down and talk to each other and get to know each other, they end up finding out that they have a whole lot more in common than they understood. Because at the end of the day, we all have the same dreams and the same aspirations. And I introduced an amendment, didn't go very far, in the Defense Appropriations Bill, in which I wanted to use a tiny, tiny fraction of the military budget to develop cultural exchange programs where young Americans would be able to go abroad, to sit down in classrooms maybe in Iran or in Saudi Arabia or in China or in Russia, and bring those young people over to this country so that we get a chance to know each other and not be afraid of each other. I think hatred stems a lot from ignorance and fear. And to the degree that we sit down and we find that we are all human beings, we can dissipate a lot of that hatred. Let me just start off with a question for you guys, and then you throw a question to me. You all came, as I did, I guess I'm on the panel as well, as the son of an immigrant. Why did your people, you or your family, come to America? What has worked for you? And what have been the most painful aspects, painful problems that you have had to address? Mo, do you want to start it off?
Well, I came to the U.S. To go to school, and
Hold that mic a little bit. Oh, yeah, that's it. Good.
I came to the U.S. to go to school and have a good life, feel the freedom, and experience, let's say, the justice.
And you came over by yourself?
Yep, I came here, to study, to Iowa. You know, as I told you at the beginning, I'm a Palestinian refugee, and everybody knows about Palestine-Israel conflict. We have been refugees since 1948. My problem is we were refugees in Lebanon. You know, we live in refugee camps.
How long was your family in a refugee camp?
My dad was born 1948. My grandma, she was pregnant with my dad when they ran away from Palestine to Lebanon. So he was born in Lebanon during the occupation of Palestine. Since then, we have been refugees. We are not allowed to go back to Palestine because our country is occupied. We cannot get citizenship in Lebanon because we're supposed to go back to our country. And we carry a travel document that is being disrespected all over the world, unfortunately. We being humiliated in every single airport because you have a refugee travel document. All the Palestinian refugees have been suffering for a long, long time. We have the United Nations, we have resolutions like 194 that talks about we're supposed to go back to our country, and we cannot get our country back. There's somebody else live in our homes, our towns. It's very complicated.
But in terms of whenever you travel and have to go into an airport, you expect to be stopped and humiliated. Is that usually the case? And
I was so excited to become a citizen, an American citizen, which I have my American passport. I'm supposed to carry this and carry my dignity with it, so I don't been humiliated anymore in the airports. And unfortunately, every time I travel in the U.S., anywhere in the world, I have to be stopped in the airport.
Despite the passport?
Despite the passport. I have an American passport. And I have been randomly selected to be put on the side. You know, and it's now anymore, it's funny because I go there, he look at me, the officer, say, guess what, I'm randomly selected, right? And he starts smiling, yep, you are. And then they put me on the side. One time we stayed 4 hours, my wife and my kids, in New Jersey airport. We missed the planes. We stayed till midnight. We are the only people in the airport. Employees left. And I'm still sitting there with no answer, just because my name is Muhammad. He told me, one of the officers said, unfortunately, you need to change your name. And I'm not going to do that. I want to keep my name Muhammad. I'm proud of my name, and I want to keep it this way.
Okay.
I went to the federal building, to the immigration, and said, what can we do to stop this? They said, write a background about you and send it to Washington, you know, so they can do background check on me, criminal check, they can clear me. I did a redress control number they send me. It's like nothing. I wasted time. Still in the airport, I'm being stopped every time I come here. And I don't understand why. They say, oh, your name matched somebody else. Said, well, you know what? This is America. We have the best technology in the world. We give technology to the rest of the world. They can't figure out who I am. I mean, fingerprint, you can figure out who I am. They have laser now, DNA.
Yep, I agree.
You know, and they still stop me.
Okay.
Something
got it.
is not right.
All right, we'll talk about that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Antonia, you talked a little bit about why your family came here. It was a very abusive situation, and I gather you, or your mom thought that she would not stay alive. Is that the situation?
Yep, that's exactly it.
All right, and talk a little bit about that, and talk about what has worked for you in the United States and what the obstacles still remain.
So I think at that point, I just thought I was saving my mom, and I don't think I understood exactly.
How old were you at that time?
I was 6, you know, but I don't think I understood how a woman loses herself when there's domestic violence until I experienced it myself. And, you know, and that's like the reason that I'm in Iowa. And, you know, she was really, really afraid. And as a kid, I just wanted to grow up with my mom, and I didn't want to stay in Mexico. That's why I'm here, because I had to fight with her. I had to be like, hey, I know it's not normal for moms to take their kids with them, but you're taking me, and you're taking my sister, because we want to grow up with you. And
You said this at the age of 6?
yeah. My daughter's right here, and she tells me what's on her mind, too, so. Yeah. And I think for us, like, we came right after the amnesty. So people were always taking that for granted. Like, nobody wanted to stay here. They didn't want to be Americans. They didn't want it. And so we didn't want it, you know? And at some point, we were like, oh, it's okay. It seems like this country is very welcoming. They give people their papers after such a time. And we thought it was going to happen to us. And I don't think we realized, and that's how my mom's spirit died, that like how our story and our lives became just like little political sound bites for people's and campaigns, and for like even for like nonprofits, and like, you know, all these people that create these stories behind it. And it's like, oh, vote for us. And it's like, okay, we'll vote for you, or like we'll encourage people to vote for you. And it's like, oh, wait, you're not priority right now. It's like, we're never priority. And it's like, my grandmother died, and my mom wasn't able to go see her, and that like broke my heart, and that like broke our family, because we're aging. And I don't think people realize. And usually when people will say, oh, we're looking for somebody if it's a DACA profile, they always want like somebody that's really young, that doesn't really understand what they're living through and how long this process takes, and just how complex a fight is, politics is. And it's usually because they would just usually, like, people like me are used like props. So I'm very particular about who I share my story with, and who I am not a prop. I'm a human.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Abigail, you talked a little bit, but go into a little bit more depth, because I don't think a lot of people are familiar with the struggles in Burma. What has worked, and obviously some things have worked here, and what the obstacles are. Hold that mic right here.
So Burma, as I mentioned earlier, Burma is the longest running civil war in the world. It's like 70 years. So in Burma, because of what I believe or who we are, I'm a minority ethnic group. So the majority ethnic group will discriminate and persecute to the minority. So because of I'm a Christian, I can never get the authority or higher level. That's what's happening in Burma. And because of I'm Chin, a minority ethnic group, I can never go for a college higher level. If there is a competition, the majority and minor, I will always have to step back. That's not fair at all. So we are looking for the human right and the freedom of speech, that people will allow us to accept who we are or what we believe. That's the reason we fled our country, to find a freedom and human right. But here we see many, sometimes I have think that, wow, I feel like the same thing, like Burma, because of that's what persecution, and then because of I'm a different person and what I believe and who I am. But here, sometimes I felt left out of the system and separated because of where I come from. So we are looking, our community are looking to have a better system that people will unite and work together and support each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Pootie, you have, why don't you tell your story a little bit and what's worked and what has not worked since your family came?
So my family originally migrated to New Mexico at first, and then we heard of other family members that were here in Des Moines, and a lot of that was thanks to Governor Robert Ray, who decided to open Iowa's home to Southeast Asian refugees, including the Thai Dam, the Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Hmong refugees, including the Lao. And we've been welcomed here with open arms, it's been a really great experience for K through 12 school, but the difficulty of being here is, and then all across America, is the cost of college continues to rise, and good jobs are still hard to come by, and it's very hard to obtain decent wages in order to raise a family, in order to have adequate health care in case an emergency happens. All these things that affect all of us, whether you're undocumented or not, we all face the same struggles, and we shouldn't be fighting against each other. We should be supporting one another against the special interests that corrupt our government and choose to side with the special interests and the 1% over us. And that's why I became a delegate for you in 2016, because we need a political revolution, and we need to have it systematically help all of us, not just the 1%, because I know that if we don't fix these systematic changes to improve our lives, then we're going to continue to blame one another based upon things about whether we look different from another, whether we worship one another, or whether we worship at all. This country, in my experience in Des Moines, has always been beautiful, and the many people I've gotten to meet from all across the world. And that's why I choose to be involved in politics that works for everyone, and not just the wealthy few.
Good, thank you. All right, let me be very specific, and I think, Antonio, you touched on some of them, but open it up to everybody. What would you like to see the United States Congress and the next president of the United States do? What specific ideas do you have as to how we can improve the situation? You want to go just Mo start and then go to Antonio, and then we just head right now.
About my...
Not just about you. What would you like to see, the United States Congress do in terms of?
Like right now, with what I'm facing, the problem I'm having every year.
Right, but above and beyond your case, I want you to talk more broadly. You and I will talk about your case.
Okay.
All right. You're being stopped you're on a list, I suppose. Yes? I think
Yes.
that's the case. And every time you appear at an airport, your name pops up. Right? All right, so let's see what we can do about that. But beyond that, more broadly speaking, what would you like to see Congress do?
Yep. I just need justice. Every American that travel, look at them. Don't look at the religion. Don't look at the race. Look at him as an American. That's how we treat them. And the airport and the border, just as an American. That's something like we need the Congress to start passing reform some of the policies, maybe some training to the officers they hire. I don't know what type of background they have, but with all these incidents are happening, they need to investigate. They need to go see why this is happening. I mean, I give you an example. In the airports, we go to a room. You can see specific races, religion, color in that room. That's it. Something is not right. This needs to be taken care of. Somebody has to look into this, investigate, and I guess needs to be talking.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right. Antonia, with as much specificity as you can, what would you like to see the Congress do? If you were the President of the United States, what would you do?
I would like them to include our voices, not just like the head of different nonprofits or think tanks in Washington, D.C., and not just like the CEOs of companies or whatever people that are ahead from top down. I want them to include us at the table because I know what I need. She knows what she needs. He knows what he needs. We know what we need, and we know what we're willing to compromise or not. We know that better than anybody. And I feel that there are a lot of people who mean well, but when it comes to compromises, they don't look at the consequences. They're like, we'll give you 6 more years of temporary status with DREAM Act. That will work because that'll make us pass the DREAM Act. They're not thinking about, do I really need that? I mean, I've been here for 30 years. I really need like 12 more years of this.
Okay, good. Abigail, if you were the president, what would you do?
If I'm a president, I will give more support to the who came here as a refugee or immigration, English as a second language, parent support, not just.
Are we doing a good enough job? By the way,
Job.
let me just, because you raised an issue we didn't talk about, English as a second language. Are we doing as good a job as we should be? People here in okay.
Yeah. Support, not just offering the class, but what kind of barrier that you have to remove. There's many more steps. That's what we have to find out the issue. And the second thing, there are a good worker from refugee immigration who come to the wants to contribute, but the system makes it so difficult to get a job. So we have to find the issue and make it more easier so that people can distribute, even though they don't speak the language. That's the system, 2 things that I would like to change. Thank you.
Okay. Woody? Back up for a second. You indicated that when your family came here and other people from Asia came here, they were welcomed with pretty much open arms. Is that the experience that your family had?
Yeah. Our family grew up like very humble, worked its way from lower class up to working middle class. I can only speak from my personal experience. I don't think I've ever really experienced any type of discrimination here. I think that my parents were always like treated with dignity, and my father was allowed to join a union where he helped build our family up and helped us like build a good life. And I mean, that's my personal experience. And
So your experience is very different than Mo's in that sense. You don't get humiliated every time you go to an airport then, huh?
Yes, I have, unfortunately, the privilege of not being racially profiled like that. And I don't think that's right, that anyone should be racially profiled like that anywhere in America.
Okay. All right, why don't we open up for a few questions? All right, ma'am, did you have a question over there, Asian and Latino? Yeah, go ahead, comment. If you got a mic.
Way back, when Bob Ray, who was actually a GOP, had some humanity and treated people fairly, is back when everybody was treated, before when the GOP went bonkers. So that's when it started.
Okay. Okay, other questions? Yeah, gentleman right here.
Thank you for going, Senator Sanders. I have an invitation and a question. I know you get it because you talk about Native Americans and the experience of slaves. I would like just to invite you to reconsider saying that the United States is a nation of immigrants, because just saying that erases the experiences of people that didn't come here by their own choosing. Basically, people who were brought up slaves and Native Americans already been here. Then the question I have is if you would be willing to, if Congress doesn't do anything to abolish ICE. ICE was created after 9/11 for a specific purpose. I don't think that was necessary, but it was created anyways, and now it's just in a completely different way, and it's just harming so many people,
Yes.
and I see it on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, I should tell you that I voted against ICE. By voting against the Department of Homeland Security, I voted against the creation of ICE in the very first place. But I think it's not just ICE. It is very clear that the immigration system itself, I mean, you've heard some of it, and there's a lot more we haven't discussed today, is completely broken. It's absolutely broken. We don't need folks to be running around frightening people with deportation. We don't need terrible raids on communities. That is not what we need. We need a process by which the undocumented in this country, some 11 million people, have a path toward citizenship. That is what we need. We need to expand the DACA program and make sure that the people in DACA get the legal protection they need immediately. And by the way, if elected president, I will do that as quickly as I can through executive order, because I just don't want people living in fear. I have talked to too many people, young people who are worried that they're going to go off to school and find that when they come home from school, their parents are not going to be home anymore because they're being arrested in the process of being deported. So I think that is what you need to do. All right, let me get some other questions if there are, sir. Yeah, back there. Oh, we got a question from a young lady right here. All right. Now, yeah, go to him. Yeah.
Senator Sanders, thank you so much for doing one of these immigration roundtables. I just got back from my country of Honduras, where it's on the verge of potentially going into another coup d'etat. I was actually in the middle of a riot just for about 5 hours, as rioting between anti-government protesters and the military and the police. If we do have another coup d'etat in Honduras, we're going to most likely see another influx of folks coming into America, especially during that time that we have President Trump. What does a Bernie Sanders administration do in Latin America? What is your policy?
For a start, I sit down and talk to you and find out what the hell is going on in Honduras. All right, but stay. Keep the mic there. Keep the mic. What is your name? I'm sorry.
My name is Christian Euclid.
Christian? Okay. Now, one of the issues that I think we don't spend enough time talking about, and Christian, I want your help on this one because you know more about it than I do, is why in God's name, what is going on so that people would walk 1,000 miles with a little baby in order to get out of Honduras? I mean, everything being equal, people want to stay in their own communities, with their own families, with the language that they know, right, where they were born and raised. They don't want to hit the road in very violent circumstances, in some cases, carrying a tiny baby to go to the American border. What is, in fact, we don't discuss this enough, so I want to hear your response to that question, and I'll tell you what I'll do.
I'll try to answer it as soon as I can, as quickly as possible. I actually came here in 1990. My mom came here in 1984. We were separated for 6 years during that time where she made that. It was, at first, it was because of poverty, better opportunities. Another thing was a misogynistic society where a single mother, a young single mother, probably didn't have much potential to succeed in life in a country like Honduras. Right now, it is a combination of climate change, the narco state, our current government. The brother of the president was arrested for drug charges of drug trafficking, and even the DEA here in the United States has set up sting operations against our own president. He is a right-wing president who just kind of bum rushed the election for his re-election. And so there is a poverty, climate change, narco
massive
state,
corruption in the
massive
country.
Corruption, yeah.
Okay, so you got poverty, violence, and corruption.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, the difficulty and what one has to figure out, it is not the function, I do not believe in military interventions, that's for sure. We've had too many instances. But I do believe, and it becomes difficult to the degree that you have a corrupt government, but I think it is imperative that the President of the United States, this is exactly what I would do, is to sit down as early as possible in our administration with Central America, with Mexico, and figure out how we can work together and create policy and aid programs to keep people where they would prefer to be in their homeland. Does that make sense to you, Christian?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yes, ma'am. Right, yes. Yes, stand up so everybody can hear you. Here's the mic.
Thank you. I came here like 3 years ago. My parents are here.
From where?
Mexico City. We came here because of the work my dad was doing over there. He was working for the DEA, FBI as an undercover. So my family got, what's the word? Amenazados. Yeah. So we came here and we started like this process to get like the citizenship. But like she said, we're still in limbo because they give you like the work permit, but the process go through this is like 6, 5, 10 years. Like they don't know. Like they just give you the work permit and it's for 2 years, and then after that you have to process that again. But because of this, my sister doesn't have like any federal help for college. Like you cannot apply for FAFSA. You cannot go to the doctor and have like medical help. So like my question is that how is that you will help this process to go like more quickly, because that's what is happening at the border as well, because it takes so many years to just get like a simple yes for, you know, like
Okay.
to have
Well,
like something to work here or
All
like be legal.
Let me answer it in two ways. I'm not a great fan of bureaucracy in general, okay? But it's not just bureaucracy right now. We clearly have a president who is hostile to immigrants, and he will make it as difficult as possible to do the right thing, all right? So that's what we're up against right now, and that's why we have got to make sure that Donald Trump is not reelected. And the second thing, though, is in terms of health care and education, it is my view, and I know that there are people who disagree with me, but I think that everybody in this country is entitled to health care as a human right. And education as well. Let me get around and ask another question. All right, we got a few little woman in the green T-shirt there. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, so my daughter is an undocumented immigrant, and we've been in the court systems with her as long as we've had her, and it's she can't even get into the airport. So she can't fly at all. She's a non-person here. She's not umbrellaed under DACA. So
She's not a what?
She is not umbrellaed under DACA. And so I guess I just wanted to make the statement that there are a lot of people that are not DACA,
Of course.
that are still in need, and she's
Right.
getting ready to look at
I know,
colleges.
and I'll tell you, one of the more, and I think a lot of people don't know this, but one of the more painful experiences that I have as I go around the country, and this happened last month in Los Angeles, I talked to some young people who are undocumented, and the fear that they have every day, the stress that they are living under every day. One young man described, appreciate this, he was in a car with his father, and his father was speeding and got stopped by a police officer, and suddenly in that car there was enormous fear. And the police officer said, "Are you undocumented?" And they lied. They said, "No, we're not." And the police officer said, "Okay, have a nice day." And what they said, his expression was, if that police officer was having a bad day, their entire family would have been destroyed. But it turned out not to be the case. But to live under that type of fear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is more than, it takes a toll on your emotional well-being. All right, maybe one last question, sir.
All the candidates talk about undocumented and refugees.
Hold it, Mike, yeah.
All candidates talk about undocumented and refugees, but there's no any single candidate talk about H-1 working visa. The students from other countries come here for school, build up their education, and they are talented young people, and we are all chase them back home. And we don't keep them in this country. We have very limited H-1 working visa. How do you solve this?
Well, you're right. It's if somebody, your point is if somebody comes to this country to study and wants to stay in this country and perhaps start a business or do something, why are we chasing them away? Well, I agree with you. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Okay, I know that we just kind of scratched the surface, and I know there's a lot of emotion on these issues. And let me just conclude by saying this to everybody who was not born in this country. And that is, the President of the United States does not, in my view, reflect what the vast majority of the American people feel. And I don't want anybody in this room to think otherwise. okay? Poll after poll after poll shows, and I'm not going to say that, it's 100%, it is not. But poll after poll shows that the American people believe in immigration reform, believe that those who are undocumented should, in one way or the other, there are differences of opinion as to how, become citizens, believe in providing immediate legal status to the 1.8 million young people in the DACA program, do not believe that people should be humiliated every time they walk in to an airport. So much appreciate the work and the efforts that people have made to improve communities coming from all over the world. So this is a tough period in American history. This is a time when we have a president who is a overt bigot and a racist, and that embarrasses us all. But as they say, this too will pass, and we will regain our position, I hope and expect, as a leader in the world that welcomes people from every part of the world, from every religion, and that we will show the entire world that people who come from all over can in fact work together and create the kind of nation we know we can become. So I want to thank all of you very much for being here. Thank you.